Hi everyone, I'm Katie Teitler, Senior Analyst at Tag Cyber, and today I'm here with Candid Wuest, the VP of Cyber Protection Research at Acronis. Candid, thanks for joining me this morning.
Thanks for having me.
So we're going to talk a little bit about Acronis's cyber protection. So some people might not be familiar with that, but I would find it hard to believe that companies and practitioners in the cybersecurity space haven't heard of Acronis. Acronis has a very long history of being a leading backup and recovery provider. And you've been with the company about a year. So let's start with your background and who you are, because your background is very different than backup and recovery. So let's level set here before we get into cyber protect and Acronis. Who are you? Why did you join Acronis?
Yeah, so as you said, my name is Candid Wuest. I started with a Master's of Computer Science at the ETH in Zurich, and then kind of did my passion of cybersecurity at the IBM Research Lab in Switzerland, and kind of grow there, kind of everything on the threat market that you see, and of course, how to protect against it. After that, I moved to Symantec, or as a global tech lead, I built up the security response team over the last, 16, 17 years. So definitely saw my fair share of cyber attacks, being it Fortune 500 companies getting attacked by nation state actors, or the kind of normal small SMBs being attacked as well by cyber criminals because they all want to make money. And last year I joined Acronis because the idea of cyber protection is really compelling to me. And it kind of shows that nowadays, just having backup alone is not good enough, but also just having antivirus alone is not good enough, because cyberspace is so complex, you need to have a holistic approach to go for it. And I thought it's a very interesting and also very needed approach, and therefore I'm happy to be part of the team to drive that forward.
Well, as we said, Acronis has a great history as a backup and recovery provider. And Cyber Protect is actually a product line, but it's also a philosophy. And tell us a little bit about why Cyber Protect and cyber protection versus just cybersecurity that we all talk about, and what does it mean in the context of the larger market, and what does it mean in terms of the product itself that you're helping build and evangelize?
Sure. So cyber protection means to look after all your endpoints, your workloads, and of course the data, right? And nowadays that can be dispersed from, now private laptops at home if you're working in home office, or somewhere in the cloud, in the real office space. So it can be everywhere. And about 4 years ago, Acronis realized that, from the backup side, everyone knows they have to do backup, or at least should do backup of the data. But with the increase of ransomware attacks, we also noticed that, having a backup alone will not always protect you against those attacks, specifically as targeted ransomware started to delete those backups or encrypt the backups themselves. So yes, you still have one, but you cannot use it. So that's not really good. So Acronis already started 4 years ago to have an anti-ransomware protection in the product and expanding it. And of course, important was to have something which is threat agnostic. So not just based on signatures in detecting well-known ones, but protecting against unknown threats in the future, because you know what they want to do. They want to tackle your data. So you can basically just look, if any application tries to encrypt your data, then it's probably something you want to prevent and revert any changes that have happened. But then Acronis realized there's actually more to this, right? There's we call it 5 pillars or vectors of cyber protection that are needed. And it's the safety. So ensure that you have a reliable copy of your data and you can access it whenever you have. So safety is one. Accessibility, making sure that you can access that data from everywhere at any time if you need it. Because having a backup in the cloud is nice, but if you cannot access it because the servers are down, you're still having a business interruption. Third one is privacy. And yes, we know people are kind of getting fed up and say, I don't have anything to hide or don't care, but we still see more and more of those data breaches happening. And yes, with the Privacy Act in California and GDPR in Europe, we see that there are more regulations coming in as well. So privacy is getting more priority on the list as well, and should definitely be kind of controlled. And even if it's not just privacy, at least having the visibility, who is accessing your data, right? You want to at least know who's doing what with your data. Fourth one is authenticity. So knowing that the data that you had a week ago or 2 weeks ago has not been tampered with, right? If it is some, let's say, Excel table with your salary, you probably want to know if someone changed it, at least if it's for the downside. So making sure that the data has not been tampered with is important for investigations as well, being it for legal cases, but also if it's a configuration, right? Because it could be a insider threat, so that some sysadmin decided to just add an exclusion for the antivirus on all the machines, resulting in your being defenseless. So making sure that you know when something has been tampered. And then, of course, you have the classical security as the last kind of line of those 5, which goes with the behavior-based detection, artificial intelligence against malware, viruses, and so on. So those 5 steps: safety, accessibility, privacy, authenticity, and security, or in short, SAPAS, if you take the first letter. That's kind of the concept or the vision where Acronis sees we need a protection, and not just some single solution, but something which is integrated, because nowadays many companies and even kind of small SMBs, they might have 5 or 10 different solutions, kind of point solutions for all of those different vectors, but that makes it really complex. And I'm not sure if everyone's the same like me, but as soon as it gets too complex, I'll start kind of losing it, and you might start making mistakes, right? And that's definitely not what you want to have in a cyberspace environment. So for best resilience and protection level, it has to be simple, efficient, and wherever possible automated as well, because nobody has time to spend 20 hours per day chasing after all those threats. So that's the idea of cyber protection, having a holistic approach to protect your data, your environment, regardless of the threats, being it inside or externals, regardless of where the data is, and so on. I hope that makes it a bit clearer.
It does. It brings up a couple of questions, though. So the idea of having an all-in-one protection, that's great. But what would you say to somebody who said, okay, I'm bringing all of these things all under one product category? Doesn't that mean that if I already have something in place that I need to rip it and replace it, that's complicated? Or, you know, I've already committed this spend over the year, 3 years, 5 years, because we know that contracts sometimes work that way, especially with the larger vendors. So how would you approach that if an enterprise in particular, because most enterprises, you've got a lot of features in Cyber Protect. We'll go through those in a minute, but most enterprises would have a lot of this coverage already deployed. And it's one thing if they're an Acronis customer, but if you're coming in to replace an incumbent or even to enhance some of the things they have, that might affect their decision, not necessarily because your product is better or worse, but because it's such a pain to change vendors in some cases.
Yeah, I agree with your point that hopefully everyone has at least some of those solutions already deployed. I mean, hopefully no one is there without any security solution, without any backup at all. But the Cyber Protect solution from Acronis allows you also to disable part of it if you already have a contract. So you can still roll it out, and you can say, okay, I'm starting to use the Acronis backup, and once my contract with my previous vendor is expiring, I will switch on the security part, or I will switch on the vulnerability assessment and patch management part. So you can gradually move over, and of course there are scripts and tools available to help you for a smooth rollout as well, to make it as quick and as simple as possible. Again, we all know that people, they want to have a simple solution, so ideally kind of a one-click button, which is not going to happen. Of course, it still needs some configuration, but you can make it as simple as possible. So I don't see it as a kind of argument to say, oh, we already have a solution, so I'm not interested in it, right? Because we see it all the time that pure antivirus solutions are replaced by other pure antivirus solutions. But why not make the kind of next step and not just replace one, but look for the future and replace two solutions into one, making it simpler and therefore kind of consolidating. And that's actually something we see more and more on the market happening, that large companies and MSPs are trying to consolidate the solutions because that also makes it cheaper for them, simpler in handling support cases and so on. So I think there is an opportunity for companies to go that route.
So it's a much simpler, easier transition. There's no stark, have to rip this out, replace it with something else, deploy it, learn how it works. You can do it sort of in a phased approach.
Absolutely, and since it is the same console that you're using for all the different components, as you say, you can start getting familiarizing with the different components, let's say, on the backup side, and it's all in one agent. So you don't even need to redeploy something. You just say, okay, now I want to switch on the URL filtering or the antivirus, and boom, from that moment on, all your clients are protected. So once you have done the rollout, it's a simple selection process, and I think it can't get any simpler than that, hopefully.
That sounds good. And you did mention briefly some of the 20-hour days. We know people work that long occasionally. We hope they don't work that long every day because of burnout and lots of other issues. But it is a fact in our industry that the need for cybersecurity talent is outpacing the availability of really good people. So something that's automated, something that's easy, something that brings visibility and control together is probably very desired in a lot of companies, and we certainly hear it from our clients too. You touched briefly on the future, so I want to go back to that a little bit. Talk us through Cyber Protect a little bit. You mentioned what it does, you mentioned the 5 pillars, but talk us through some of the features, some of the elements. You mentioned antivirus. What are some of the other features that are incorporated? And I know you guys have some big plans, so what's coming down the pike? What can customers and potential customers expect from Cyber Protect?
So at the moment, the Acronis Cyber Protect or Cyber Protect Cloud has kind of 3 main groups. One being the data protection, so classical backup, disaster recovery, which Acronis is known for. So you have a fast recovery. You can spin up some backups in the cloud as a virtual machine and then fail over to those. So that's kind of what we are known for. Then we have the security part, which is a full security stack from signature-based detection, cloud reputation, pre-execution AI model to detect kind of new malware samples, behavior-based detection, as I said, threat agnostic, and of course also exploit prevention against any zero-day exploits that might come your way. So the full security stack that you need against that, flood of malware samples which are coming. And the third pillar is kind of the management side. So we do a little bit on the prevention side. So that's vulnerability assessment and patch management. We can scan your systems for missing patches, not just from Microsoft, but also for more than 200 different other applications like browser Chrome, Firefox, or Zoom, WebEx. You can get those checked and then automatically also roll out the patch for those if there is one available. And since we do have the integration across all those 3 pillars, we can also use the synergies and the benefits. So if there is a patch available, you can automatically create a backup before you roll out the patch. So if there is some issue with it, you can simply roll back to the working copy. Or you can use the backups to create an allow list, or kind of a whitelist out of it, so that you don't detect any of your own core applications by mistakes for a false positive. Or you can scan your backups in the cloud, which reduces the load on the systems itself, but also means that if there is a rootkit, it's no longer active in the cloud. And if you want to restore the backup, you know it is secure and has not been tampered with. So that's kind of where we stand. And of course, we have additional features like remote access, like an RMM solution, allowing you to remotely access a client, because maybe you want to manually touch something, change some configuration, or verify what the user is seeing, so you can do those remote sessions as well. And we're expanding that. So we're expanding the kind of remote capabilities, having to run better scripts to automatically check and change some of the configurations. We're adding additional security packs on top, like data loss prevention, So integrating that you can see if someone's trying to steal your personal or let's say very sensitive corporate information, which happens a lot of times now with the targeted ransomware attacks where they steal your information. We are integrating with email security solutions so that you can block it there as well, although we already have a URL filtering capability in the security stack as well, so blocking against phishing or command and control servers. So we're kind of expanding in all directions, giving you the options to then select and say, yes, I do want to go and protect with DLP, or no, I am not under any regulations, although I doubt that. And therefore, you can kind of add those puzzles together. And the important part is it's all in one console, one agent, kind of combining it, and again, making it very simple for you to use. And of course, in the future, we hope to automate more and more of those steps with artificial intelligence as well, kind of adding the, let's say, self-healing or automation that even if there is something happening, it will automatically be taken care of, because you mentioned the skills gap and kind of the shortage of IT personnel. It's nice to have all those hundreds of alerts saying, hey, there is something suspicious going on, but if you don't have the time to analyze all of them, you're not really the wiser. You cannot block all of them because your people will scream at you. But if you just ignore them, then that's what happened with Target and other breaches in the past, where they would have had an alert, but they were still compromised. So there needs to be kind of a nice balance between what artificial intelligence and automation can do for you, but there also needs to be kind of a simple way, because there still needs to be some human interaction for some cases. And we're building that kind of over the next few quarters to add more and more. And of course, we're talking to our main customer base, the managed security service providers, to see kind of what are the new things that they will need, because we probably will see a shift in the threat landscape as well. It's all dynamic, I guess, but at least I hope I can give you a kind of an indication of what our vision for the future is. We want to be the end-to-end solution, from patching at the beginning, making sure that you're not falling victim, detecting and responding to anything that's happening, but even giving you the root cause analysis opportunities or the forensic backups that we can do, so you can have a investigation and analyze what has happened.
That's great. That's a lot for people to ingest here, so they can either re-listen to this or maybe go to your website. But Candid, you teed up a great question, one that I always like to ask, and especially for you, because you have a history as a threat researcher. So you just said a couple of minutes ago that there are always changes in the attack landscape. What are those? What are you guys seeing? What are some of the new or novel types of threats that you're seeing within your customer base, without revealing anything specific about a customer? What are the trends? What are you seeing? We talked about ransomware. Even ransomware is evolving, right? It's not just the same old, same old. So what's new? What should people be aware of so that they can prepare for it? And what do you think is coming down the pike?
Yeah, I mean, ransomware or targeted ransomware definitely evolved over the last 2 years drastically as well. So their main goal is no longer to just encrypt your data, but they will steal a lot, as in terabytes of your sensitive information, and then they will ask you for some nice sum of money, and if you don't pay, they will leak it on underground forums. And we've already seen more than 1,500 large companies had their data being leaked on those underground sites because they did not pay the 10 million, 15 million ransoms. So that's some shift that we see, kind of the double extortion scheme, because yeah, more and more companies do have a backup, but they don't have the full stack, so the data is still stolen. And of course, that means, yes, even if you do restore with the backup, you still have maybe regulatory fines coming your way. And unfortunately, that helps the bad guys to actually get people to pay up. But we also saw that a lot of them start to automate as much as possible. So at the moment, targeted ransomware is still kind of a mix between manual work inside the network, figuring out where the interesting data is or how to get a domain administrative account. But there are more and more scripts that help to automate this. And that's probably something we will see in the future as well. We've already seen it on the phishing and scam email side, where they even use artificial intelligence to kind of tweak the patterns, right? If you receive an email saying, hey, there's a parcel delivery, please click here to get notified when it's delivered at your doorstep. Some of them are very convincing, but not all of them. And artificial intelligence helps the bad guys to figure out which of those actually worked, and then they can refine it to increase their success rate, which of course means more victims, more profits for their side. So that's another thing. We see more frequency because of the automation. Just to give you some numbers, the AV Test Institute in Germany, they see on every given day 600,000 new malware samples being created.
Wow.
So over 500,000 new malware samples being created every day. You can imagine that's not done by hand, right? That's a lot of automation. You can count yourself lucky because you got a unique virus, but that's probably not what you are aiming for. But that means it's getting harder with traditional security just to kind of address those. They still do the same, right? They still try to steal your credit card or encrypt your data, but it looks different, behaves slightly different in order to bypass kind of classical signatures and so on. And the last point probably to raise is the, let's say, misuse of trust. Being it supply chain attacks that we've seen in the past, like SolarWinds, right? Still a big issue, still lots of concerns and new discoveries coming in there. That's not the first one we've seen. We've seen ASUS, we've seen CCleaner, MEDocs with NotPetya. There have been dozens of those cases over the years.
And there will be more.
And unfortunately, there will be more because it's successful, right? It works. It's coming into a trusted relationship. Well, I mean, we trained people to say, yes, please update my software as soon as possible. So that's the way the bad guys are coming into your network now. And we've seen that lots of the attackers are doing the same now for MSPs, the service providers. So they're attacking a service provider, which allows them to use their own tools like package delivery, as in software package delivery or backup or security tools, to then deploy their malware into all the clients. So they're using their own tools, as in the infrastructure from the MSP, against yourself. Kind of a classical living off the land attack model, using legitimate tools. It used to be just a PowerShell, but now we see that they're actually logging into the backup console, creating a backup of your file share to a Azure cloud, which basically means they're stealing all your data through the backup. Or they're using the RMM solution to remotely make a session onto the machine and then deploy the malware through that feed, right? It's all legitimate tools, so nobody will detect those. But the question is, do you realize that it's at 2 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday and your admin is hopefully sleeping? Well, hopefully means, unfortunately, also it will miss the attack because that's exactly what they're aiming for. So those trusted relationships will definitely keep us busy for the future as well, unless we're gaining the visibility across all the different silos of what's happening in your environment.
Yeah, so it's really making sure you're looking for the right signals, that you can sort through the right signals to find the so-called noise, using automation, using advanced math, whether it's machine learning or AI, but also looking across the full stack. It's not just about preventing threats, because we know threats are going to get in there. But as you said, attackers can be attacking your backups directly, so it has to be archived correctly. It has to be protected. It has to be protected in transit, at rest, wherever, during during the whole cycle. So really good work at Acronis. Thanks for talking to me today, Candid, and for everybody listening. Check out our friends at Acronis. Check out what they're doing. If you're not aware of them as a cyber protection company, if you're only aware of them as backup, definitely check out what they're doing, because we've had a bunch of conversations and it's been really fun. So Candid, thanks again for spending time. For everybody listening, thank you so much, and we'll see you again on the next video chat.
Thank you, Katie. Have a great day.